before poverty taught her how small a meal could be, kindness had already taught her how big a heart should grow. She did not know that one quiet decision made on an empty stomach beside a dusty roadside would one day turn the whole city's eyes toward her and reveal a secret hidden behind a crippled man's silent smile. She hurried along the dusty roadside as the sun slipped behind the crooked roofs. Hello guys, welcome to African Legends and Love, where interesting stories of African folk tales, etc. are told. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. She carried a worn nylon bag that rustled like dry leaves, and inside it rested the one thing she owned that day, a small, steaming bowl of rice wrapped in paper. It was the last meal she had managed to buy after standing 12 long hours in front of a small kiosk, waving shoes at uninterested passers-by. The evening breeze touched her face gently, as if trying to apologize for how life had treated her. Her name was Amina. She lived in a single room behind a mechanic workshop, where the smell of engine oil sometimes sneaked into her dreams. She earned only when she sold something, and some days no one bought anything. Yet she kept smiling because she believed smiles were free, and free things were all she could afford. As she walked, she whispered to herself, "Tonight I will eat slowly, just slowly, like a rich woman tasting life." Then she saw him. He sat beside a broken street pole, an elderly man with tired eyes, twisted legs folded beneath a worn wrapper. His crutch leaned against the pole as if it too was exhausted. His voice was soft when he spoke. "My daughter, do you have something small for me?" He did not beg loudly like others. He simply asked, as if he respected her poverty. She paused. Her stomach tightened. That bowl was all she had. If she gave it away, she would sleep hungry again, and hunger had started greeting her by name. She looked at the man. His face held dignity, like someone who once walked tall before life shortened his steps. For a brief second, she considered pretending she didn't hear. But her mother, who used to sell oranges by the roadside before she passed, once told her, "Kindness is the only wealth that refuses to go broke." So she walked to him, knelt beside him, and placed the warm paper into his trembling hands. "Please eat," she said gently. "I will be fine." He stared at her, surprised. "You too need it," he said. "Yes," she replied with a small laugh, "but my hunger can wait. Yours looks impatient." He chuckled weakly. "God bless you," he murmured, and as he ate, he closed his eyes, as though the rice was not just food, but memory. She watched for a moment, her heart both aching and strangely full. Then she stood up, wiped invisible dust from her faded skirt, and continued home. Hunger walked beside her like a silent companion, but peace walked on the other side, and somehow the balance felt bearable. That night the rain came without invitation. Water tapped loudly on the zinc roof of her room, turning sleep into a negotiation. Her stomach rumbled, sounding like a complaining neighbor. Still, she whispered, "Tomorrow will be better." It was a phrase she used so often it deserved rent-free accommodation in her life. Morning arrived with the noise of passing buses and shouts from the market. She tied her headscarf and went back to the kiosk, arranging the shoes the way she always did. Sandals in front, smart shoes at the back, hope in the middle. Customers came, looked, calculated, and left. She smiled at them anyway. A small boy asked the price of a shoe he clearly couldn't afford. Instead of chasing him away, she let him try it on. "One day," she said jokingly, "your wallet will grow muscles." He laughed and ran off. By evening, she sold only one pair. The commission was small, but enough for garri and water. She mixed it carefully as though performing a ceremony. Then she remembered the old man and wondered if he had eaten today. Something inside her prayed yes. Over the next few days, she passed that same spot. Sometimes he was there, sometimes not. When he was, she greeted him with respect. He responded with stories, short ones, about the weather, the madness of traffic, or the stubbornness of mosquitoes. He never begged her again. Instead, he always asked, how was business, as though he were a shareholder in her small fortunes. She liked that. It made her feel seen. One evening, she noticed he wore the same shirt, washed thin by time. She sighed. Baba, if life was a person, I would sit it down and talk sense into it. He laughed loudly, and for a brief moment they both forgot the weight of their worlds. Yet her struggles did not magically disappear. There were nights she cried quietly, pressing her face into her pillow so neighbors wouldn't hear. But every time she remembered that simple meal she gave away, her tears softened. She felt like she had planted a seed somewhere, and seeds had a habit of surprising people. One afternoon, a sudden storm scattered the market. Traders rushed to cover their goods. Amina gathered the shoes, but one box slipped and rolled into the muddy water. She chased it, slipping, nearly falling. Someone grabbed her arm firmly. When she looked up, she expected a fellow trader. Instead, she saw a neatly dressed man with kind eyes. He handed her the box and said, "Careful, even strong hearts can fall." She thanked him shyly. He nodded and walked away, disappearing into the rain. She didn't know why, but the encounter stayed with her. Later, she told the old man about it, and he smiled strangely, as if he knew a joke she hadn't heard yet. Life has interesting handwriting. Sometimes you only read the meaning much later. Days turned into weeks. The crippled beggar became a quiet landmark in her life. She didn't pity him anymore. She respected him. He carried himself like someone who had learned how to bend without breaking. Sometimes they talked about dreams. She said she wished for a small shop of her own. He replied softly, "That dream is not too big. Maybe it is just sleeping." One evening, as the sky wore its orange robe, she noticed he was missing. She waited a little, then went home uneasy. The next day, he still wasn't there. She asked around, but no one knew. A strange fear brushed her thoughts. Had he fallen sick? Did he have family? She realized she knew so little about him, yet he occupied space in her heart like an old friend. That night she prayed again, not for money, not for success, just for the safety of a man who once received her only mail and returned it with blessings. As she drifted to sleep, she did not know that life, with all its mysterious handwriting, had already begun to rewrite her story quietly, letter by letter. The next morning arrived with the sound of hawkers calling out prices and motorcycles coughing along the street, and still the old man did not return to his usual place beneath the crooked pole. She noticed the absence like a missing button on a worn shirt, small but impossible to ignore. As she arranged the shoes neatly at the kiosk, she kept glancing toward the road, hoping to see that familiar folded wrapper and leaning crutch. Nothing. Only people rushing past, each one carrying invisible battles. She sighed and told herself he probably found a place to rest better than the roadside. Business dragged like a stubborn donkey, yet little by little, small blessings began to sneak into her life. One day, an office worker bought 2 pairs of shoes without bargaining, which felt almost unbelievable. Another day, the kiosk runner, who usually counted coins like he was protecting state secrets, smiled and said, "Amina, you can close early today." She laughed softly at the surprise. It wasn't a miracle, but it felt like life had slightly loosened its tight belt. Still, she wondered about the old man. By the end of the week, someone finally spoke about him. A taxi driver who often parked near the pole leaned on his car and said, "That crippled man, I heard he moved somewhere uptown." Another woman added, "Some say he has relatives, quiet people. They come for him sometimes." Amina listened carefully. She wanted to ask more, but the stories came wrapped in mystery. No one seemed to know exactly who he was. That alone made curiosity follow her like a younger sibling. The weather grew hotter. Dust turned the road into a light brown ribbon. She bought roasted corn for lunch and whispered a small prayer of thanks before eating. Then, just as she finished, she noticed a folded envelope tucked under one of the shoeboxes. Her heart jumped. She looked around, half expecting someone to shout, "It belongs to me," but no one did. She opened it carefully. Inside was a simple note written in neat handwriting. "Kindness is never wasted. Keep walking with a clean heart." No name, no explanation. She frowned slightly. Who left it? Was it from a customer, a friend, or, the thought came softly, the old man? She kept the note inside her small bag as though it were gold. That evening, as she walked home, she noticed new posters on the walls, charity events, community outreach programs, talk of an anonymous donor helping struggling families. People discussed the mysterious giver like he was a ghost who paid rent. Amina smiled at the idea. Maybe rich people also like privacy, or maybe kindness worked best when it didn't shout. One afternoon, as the clouds began to gather, she saw him again. He sat beneath a tree across the road, not at the pole, but close enough to recognition. Relief washed through her like cool water. She crossed quickly, careful of the potholes. "Baba," she called softly. He turned and his eyes warmed. "Ah, my business partner," he teased. She laughed, happy he still had humor packed somewhere between his worries. "You disappeared," she said. "I was concerned." "I traveled a little," he replied calmly. "These legs don't like to sit in one place too long. They may be weak, but they are restless." His smile carried something unspoken. Gratitude, memory, a secret. She noticed his clothes seemed slightly newer. Not rich, not flashy, just better. She wondered if someone had helped him. Before she could ask, he asked about her day. She explained the slow sales, the odd blessings, the mysterious note. He nodded thoughtfully. "Kindness," he said, "has a louder voice than people think. Sometimes it speaks in gifts, sometimes in protection, sometimes in opportunity." She sat beside him for a moment. People passed and stared, but she didn't mind. She had learned that dignity didn't come from chairs or titles. It came from how one treated others. He asked gently, "And you? Do you ever wish you had kept that meal?" She shook her head. "No, hunger goes, regret stays longer." He smiled slowly, and for a brief second his eyes glistened, like someone remembering a life before life rearranged him. "Good answer," he murmured. Days layered themselves like pages in a notebook. Her life continued, not magically easy, but less lonely. Customers started remembering her name. Some brought friends. One woman told her, "I like how you talk kindly, even when people don't buy." She simply shrugged. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She had just learned that harshness drained energy she couldn't afford. Yet whispers kept circling around the old man. A boy who washed cars whispered that the beggar once arrived in a big car before life changed him. A tailor swore she saw him talking confidently to a wealthy merchant as equals. Others dismissed it as gossip, because poverty sometimes acts like a disguise and fools the eye. Still, those stories stirred curiosity like a spoon in tea. One evening, the old man looked unusually serious. He told her softly, "Amina, never measure people by what they carry in their pockets. Measure them by what they carry in their hearts." She nodded. "Yes, Baba, poverty does not cancel dignity." He chuckled. "True, and wealth does not guarantee wisdom." Rain began to fall lightly, a soft drumbeat across the city. She pulled her shawl closer and said goodbye. As she walked away, she sensed that change hovered near, like thunder waiting for its cue. She didn't know why, she just felt it. Later that week, a stranger visited the kiosk. He wore a well-tailored suit, but had the calm eyes of someone who respected street life. "Are you Amina?" he asked gently. She nodded, slightly nervous. He handed her a card. "A man asked me to give you this. He said you once fed him when no one looked at him twice." Her breath caught. The card carried the name of a large foundation she had only heard of in distant conversations. On the back was a handwritten message, "We will talk soon. Keep your faith steady." She read the words again and again, trying to connect the dots. Could it be him? That night she barely slept, not because of fear, but because hope, that small, stubborn bird in her chest, suddenly began flapping its wings harder.
She remembered the way the old man spoke about life's handwriting. Maybe the letters were finally forming into words she could read. Yet, even in excitement, she stayed grounded. She still woke early, still greeted neighbors, still smiled at customers, even the ones who negotiated like seasoned diplomats. She told herself, if blessings come, let them find me working. People in the market started talking more loudly about the mysterious benefactor helping struggling sellers and widows. Some said he had once been poor himself. Others claimed he simply had a generous heart. And somewhere in those whispers, her heart recognized a familiar tone. Through it all, she remained the same, humble, patient, a little tired but still hopeful. She understood something important. Kindness was not an investment expecting returns. It was simply an expression of who one chose to be. And silently, like a drumbeat growing louder in the distance, destiny walked closer, preparing to knock on her small, weathered door. The day destiny finally stretched out its hand toward her began like any other, with the scent of frying akara drifting across the market and the hum of ordinary life moving along stubbornly. She arrived early at the kiosk, wiping each shoe gently as though polishing her dreams. She didn't expect anything unusual. She rarely did. Hope was something she carried quietly, like a folded cloth at the bottom of a drawer. By mid-morning, the sun had turned the road into a glowing ribbon and sweat gathered at the back of her neck. She took a short break, sipping water slowly, when a black SUV rolled to a calm stop near the curb. The market grew curious instantly. Big cars had that effect, like sudden thunder. Two men stepped out, neatly dressed but not arrogant. One spoke politely. "Please, madam, are you Amina?" Her stomach fluttered. "Yes," she answered. "Someone would like to see you." For a second, fear tiptoed through her heart, the kind that arrives uninvited. But something deeper, calmer, whispered, "Walk." So she locked up the kiosk and followed them into the car. As it moved, the city slipped past like a film. She wondered if she was dreaming. She even pinched her arm lightly. It hurt, so no, this was reality, the type she never rehearsed for. They arrived at a large compound surrounded by neat hedges and quiet dignity. Not loud wealth, just thoughtful. She was guided into a spacious sitting room that smelled faintly of polished wood. Her worn shoes looked shy against the fine floor tiles. She stood, unsure what to do with her hands, when the door opened. He came in slowly, the crippled beggar she once fed. Only he did not look like a beggar now. He still used a crutch, but his clothes were fine, his face rested, his hair neatly trimmed. Yet his eyes, those gentle, thoughtful eyes, remained the same. She gasped softly, "Baba?" He smiled, warmth spreading across his face. "Welcome, my daughter." Confusion wrapped around her like a blanket. I don't understand." He gestured for her to sit. She obeyed, careful not to break anything, including her composure. He lowered himself into a comfortable chair with practiced ease. Then, quietly, he spoke. "My name is not only Baba. My real name is Chief Ibrahim Adewale. Years ago, I was one of the wealthiest men in this city. Businesses, properties, influence, all of it. But illness humbled my body, and betrayal humbled my heart. People I trusted disappeared when money stopped flowing like river water. I wanted to know the truth about the world, about people. So I chose to live simply for a while, quietly, anonymously. Not because I enjoyed suffering, but because wealth sometimes builds walls between hearts." He paused, watching her face gently. She blinked. "So, all this time?" "Yes," he nodded. "I sat by that pole, not to test people in a cruel way, but to observe life without titles. Many looked away, some insulted, some pitied without respect. But you," he leaned forward slightly, "you had nothing, yet you still shared the only meal you had. And you did it with dignity. Not noise, not show, not expectation. Hunger pulled at your stomach, but kindness answered first." Her heart thumped loudly in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but words hid behind emotion. He continued softly, That day, I decided I must know your story. Quietly, of course. I learned how you work tirelessly, how you care for people even when life does not care enough for you, how you protect your dignity even in scarcity. Such hearts, he said slowly, are rare treasures. She swallowed, unsure whether to cry or laugh. Chief, I didn't do anything special. You are hungry, that was all. And yet, he replied, so many hungry people walk past other hungry people every day. Silence settled gently between them for a moment. Then he said, I have built many things in my lifetime, but now I want to build lives. I started a foundation quietly. We support honest workers, widows, students. And today, I wish to open a door for you, Amina. He signaled to one of the men, who brought a neat folder and placed it on the table. Chief Ibrahim explained carefully. Inside are documents for a fully stocked shoe shop located in a busy shopping plaza. The rent is paid for 3 years. The business will be registered in your name. There is also a small apartment, modest but safe and comfortable. You will no longer sleep beside engine oil. His eyes softened. Consider it not a reward, but a partnership with your kindness. Her world tilted. She covered her mouth with trembling hands as tears blossomed like sudden rain. Chief, this is too much. I don't deserve. He raised a gentle hand. You deserve respect, opportunity, and peace. Wealth should lift, not intimidate. I am not rescuing you. I am simply watering a seed you already planted. For a moment, she remembered her mother's words. Kindness is the only wealth that refuses to go broke. She felt as though her mother was sitting beside her, smiling proudly. She wiped her tears and laughed softly through them. If I faint, please don't laugh at me, she whispered. He chuckled warmly. If you faint, we'll give you tea. They spoke for a long while. He asked her dreams, not just her needs. She told him she wished one day to help other struggling girls, those who slept hungry but still smiled at dawn. He nodded thoughtfully. Then this shop, he said, will be the beginning, not the end. When she finally stepped back outside, the sky looked brighter, as though the clouds themselves approved of the day's events. The same city that once ignored her now seemed to watch with gentler eyes. Even the wind felt kinder. But beneath her gratitude, humility sat firmly. She told herself, remember where you came from. Remember hunger. Remember compassion. Because blessings, like spoons, work best in gentle hands. Word spread, first softly like a rumor, then loudly like a drumbeat. The crippled beggar is a billionaire, people exclaimed. Some were shocked, some felt guilty. Others suddenly remembered being friendly to him, but he ignored all noise, walking calmly with his faithful crutch and wiser heart. As for Amina, she returned to the market one last time, not to boast, but to thank the people who once stood beside her during ordinary days. She hugged the young boy with the future wallet muscles, laughed with the rusted corn seller, and gave small gifts to fellow traders. She told them gently, kindness did not make me poorer, it prepared my future. And quietly, without fanfare, her new life began to unfold. News of the truth flowed through the city like rainy season flood water, rushing into every corner, every shop, every gossip circle. People pointed at the plaza where Amina's new shop stood, whispering, that is the girl the billionaire helped. She heard the whispers sometimes, floating like birds overhead, but she never let them perch on her heart. She still greeted every customer with the same gentle warmth. She still arranged shoes carefully, rubbing each pair softly as though blessing it. The only difference was that now she owned the keys, the shelves, the future. Chief Ibrahim visited often, leaning on his crutch yet standing taller than most people she knew. He guided her through business records, receipts, stock planning, and savings. Wealth, he reminded her, is like a stubborn goat. If you don't hold it well, it will run back into the bush. She laughed each time and replied, then I will hold it with both hands, sir. Their conversations were light, but beneath them lived gratitude and mutual respect. People who once hurried past her kiosk now paused to admire the polished glass windows and shining displays. Some expected her to change, to grow proud, to forget. Instead, she remained as grounded as bare feet on village soil. When poor traders shyly stepped into her shop, apologizing that they only came to look, she smiled and said, "Come in, even looking is free." They laughed with relief, surprised that success had not hardened her heart. She hired 2 young girls who once carried trays on their heads from dawn to dusk. She trained them patiently, teaching them not only how to sell, but how to speak kindly. A soft word, she would say, can sometimes sell more shoes than bright colors. The girls adored her. They joked together when the shop was quiet, sharing roasted groundnuts and stories. The shop became more than a business. It became a small island of dignity. Chief Ibrahim quietly continued his work through the foundation, yet people were most intrigued by his friendship with the young woman who once sacrificed her only meal. Journalists tried to interview her. She declined politely. "The real story," she said gently, "is not about surprise wealth. It is about everyday kindness." Some rolled their eyes. They preferred glamour, but others listened, and slowly something changed in the air. A new respect for simple goodness. Over time, the chief's health improved with proper care. Though his legs still struggled, his spirit felt lighter. Sometimes he sat in her shop and watched life move by. Children waved at him. Adults greeted him warmly. Once, a little boy asked innocently, "Sir, why do you still use a crutch if you are rich?" He smiled and replied, "Because even money must respect reality." The room burst into laughter. One late afternoon, as the sky faded into soft gold, he told her, "Amina, I will not always be here, but the seed of kindness we shared must continue." She nodded thoughtfully. "Then let us water more hearts." They began a small program together, offering training and startup support for young girls who worked in markets but dreamed of more stable lives. Some learned tailoring, others opened mini stores. Each one carried away not only income, but restored dignity. Elderly women blessed her, saying, "May your shadow never shrink." She always answered modestly, "We are all simply passing kindness forward." Yet life remained real. There were challenging days. Some weeks were slow, some suppliers delayed. There were mistakes, repairs, paperwork that made her sigh. Still, she approached every problem with patience, remembering the nights she once slept hungry. Gratitude gave her strength. One evening, while closing the shop, she paused at the doorway. Street lights glowed softly, and the plaza hummed with voices. Her heart felt full yet calm. She whispered, "Mama, I hope you see me." The breeze answered by lifting the edge of her scarf like a gentle hug from the past. As months rolled into years, people slowly stopped calling Chief Ibrahim the crippled beggar. They called him instead the man with the generous heart. And Amina, once the girl who nearly disappeared in the crowd, became known as the woman who never forgot kindness. Not because she sought fame, but because humility cannot hide forever. It glows. One day, the chief gathered friends, partners, and foundation members at a modest hall. Amina stood by his side, steady and serene. He spoke slowly, his voice rich with emotion. "Once, a girl with nothing fed me without asking who I was. Today, she reminds us that the size of the gift matters less than the size of the heart that gives it." Tears glimmered in eyes across the room. After the event, she walked him to the car. He rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I am proud of you, daughter." She smiled softly. "I am grateful for you, father." Not by blood, but by choice, trust, and kindness. Years later, when life had woven many more stories between them, the lesson remained clear in every corner of their journey. Dignity is not swallowed by poverty, and wealth is not weakened by compassion. They coexist beautifully in hearts that choose goodness. And whenever someone asked how everything began, she answered simply, with one meal, one quiet evening, and one decision to be kind, even when it cost me. Because sometimes the smallest seeds carry the largest trees within them. Kindness does not always return the way we expect, yet it never disappears. It builds bridges, softens hardship, and reminds us that every human being carries worth, whether rich, poor, healthy, or weak. True dignity is not measured by clothes, money, or titles, but how gently we hold each other's hearts. When we give with sincerity, we water our own souls, and in time, blessings often find their way back to us quietly. So, choose compassion even on difficult days. Someone's tomorrow may bloom because of your goodness today. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you learned in the comments below.